My name is William E. Callahan, Jr., and I'm a magistrate judge sitting in the Eastern District of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and I was appointed on August 1st, 1995. I retired formally on April Fool's Day, 2015, and I'm now on recall status without staff.
Okay, Bill, before we talk about your career as a magistrate judge, let's talk about your background. In fact, tell us something about your background. Where were your ancestors from? I know you're Irish, so you've got a lot of tales to tell.
This is so awkward because Aaron, you and I know each other so well, but yeah, I'm a Callahan, and my mother was a Bethune. She was from French-Canadian ancestry and some English. And we think we've traced some Native American in that side of my family. My dad is a Callahan. His mother was a Sturtevant. So on that side, I'm Dutch and Irish. My great-great-grandfather came from Ireland, and I think I've traced him on a ship arriving in 1842.
Oh, and your dad was born here, and your mom?
My mom and dad were both born here. My dad was born and raised in Rensselaer, Indiana, and my mother in Kankakee, Illinois. So
what did your dad do for a living? Because you were born in Illinois.
I was born in Illinois. My dad started out as a parts picker for the International Harvester Company and met my mother in Kankakee. And eventually he worked his way up, working in Decatur, Illinois, and in the Chicago area, then Teaneck, New Jersey, and then back to the Chicago area. And my dad was a very successful salesperson with International Harvester and ended up retiring as the vice chairman of International Harvester, which is pretty good for a guy not having a college education.
That's for sure. Were you the first one in your family?
No, I have 4 sisters, 2 older, 2 younger. And all of us attended college, and so yeah, I was the middle child and the only son. That's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it must be difficult being the only male among your siblings.
My sisters said I was spoiled, but I think otherwise.
So, what city were you born
in? I was born in Evanston, Illinois, while my parents were living, and then we moved to Teaneck, New Jersey when I was an infant, but I remember a lot of Teaneck. We lived 1.5 miles from the George Washington Bridge, and I remember picking raspberries right around our house. I don't think you could do that now. And then we moved back to the Chicago area when I was 4, and moved into a home in Park Ridge, Illinois, and I lived there through my entire growing up years.
And you went to high school there?
I went to Notre Dame High School in Niles, Illinois. And then I went on to Marquette University in Milwaukee, and that's what brought me to Wisconsin, and that's where I stayed. And I always say that I was taught by the Sisters of Mercy in grade school, the Holy Cross Fathers in high school, and the Jesuits in college, and the Jesuits were the best.
Well, let's go back to high school. Other than trying to escape the sisters and everything, what sort of activities did you participate in? Sports or other activities?
Well, some sports. I tried out for everything, but there were 1,600 boys in the high school, so I was too small for football. I was too short for basketball and too slow for baseball. But I did run track, interestingly enough, and I ran cross country, and I wasn't very good. But I did that, and then I was also in some musicals, junior and senior in high school, because that was a good way of meeting girls, because we didn't have any girls in the high school. So I was. So
you imported girls for the musicals?
Oh yes, you can't do Oklahoma or Guys and Dolls without gals, right?
Well, so you had a good singing voice, or you were light on your feet as a dancer, or what?
I was in the chorus. I was in the back.
But I understand. I know you play a musical instrument. How
did
that come about?
When I was about 12 or 13, my mother, who was a singer, she had been a singer in a group when she was younger. She bought me a ukulele, taught me how to play the ukulele, and then I moved on from there when I was about 13 or 14 to the guitar. And then joined a band in high school, played rock and roll, cover band music in high school, some in college, and then we got the band back together when I was in my early 30s and continued to play. We still do. In fact, this Saturday night we're playing for a private little gig. We're not very good, but we're not bad.
And it's a guitar you play?
Guitar and now the banjo.
Okay. So now in retirement, you can you get the band together and you play.
Yeah, but some of them have died, so we can't get the entire band back together.
So you got up, you went to college, you came to Milwaukee.
Came to Milwaukee, went to college at Marquette. I met my wife at Marquette sophomore year. Both of us were attending a freshman-only welcome week dance. So we both were coloring outside the lines right out of the gate, and met her and dated. Sometimes I thought we should date other people, so we broke up, and she dated other people and I didn't. So anyway, I was the lucky one.
When did you get married? Were you in law school?
No, it was after freshman year of law school, August 7th, 1971. Same anniversary as you and Karen.
Yes, I know, we share that.
Yeah.
We celebrate our anniversaries together.
Right.
So that was in law school, but before you got to law school, let's go back to college. What was your major in college?
I double majored in political science and history, and you're probably going to ask me what were you going to do with that, and I didn't know. I don't think any of us knew right in college what you're going to do. I knew that I guess there were expectations in my family that I was going to go on to do something beyond college, and I joined a fraternity in college named Phi Theta Psi. It was a local, it's now gone, but that was probably one of the biggest influences in my going on to law school, because the fellows who were in the fraternity were all very bright. We had the highest GPA on campus, and they always wanted to continue to be so. They studied hard, and we partied hard. But because there was a lot of peer pressure to study and to do well, and a lot of my fraternity brothers went on to become physicians and dentists and professors and lawyers. And I think that had not been for that group of friends, fraternities, I think, destroy a lot of careers. In this case, it helped me focus, and there was some peer pressure to succeed and go on.
So did you know right away that law school was the right fit, that you made the right decision?
When I got into law school? I don't know. I was scared to death in law school. I was afraid of flunking out. It was one of those, look to your left, look to your right, one, he won't be here next year. So I always say if I had studied half as much in college as I did in law school, I would have been a straight A student. But so I knew I wanted to succeed in law school. And yeah, there were parts of law school I detested, other parts that I found interesting and thought, well, okay, maybe I could do this.
And you were married at the time.
Well, I was after freshman year.
After your freshman year.
Yeah.
Did that put extra pressure on you in law school? I mean, it's difficult studying, but now you're married, going to start a family.
It helped me because I had nothing else to do at night but study. I wasn't going to, there were no temptations to go out with the guys at night or whatever, and it helped me. In fact, I remember my parents were not, they thought a great deal of my wife, Jody, but they were cool on the idea of getting married before school was finished. So it was with great pride that I called them after the first semester of my second year and said, hey, my grades went up, marriage is good for me.
And was Jody working?
Jody was a school teacher. Jody, we both graduated from college at the same time, same year, and she taught school in one of the Milwaukee suburbs and supported me all through law school.
Supported you and your family. You have a pretty big family.
Well, we didn't have a big family then, but after I graduated from college, law school, I found a job in Milwaukee, and there weren't a lot of jobs available. I think it was a tough time looking back on it, but maybe they just didn't want to hire me. Anyway, I got a job with a law firm called Goldberg, Previent and Ullman, was a labor law firm representing the unions. In fact, we were one of the law firms that represented Jimmy Hoffa before he passed away.
Did you ever meet him?
Nope, nope. No, that was long ago. That was long before. But our first child was born in 77. Is that right? No, 74. 74. So 3 years after we got married, and we had a little boy. And then after about 2 years in private practice at that firm, I received an offer to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and in large part because a former college counselor that was at Marquette, a guy named Joe Stadmiller, who I got to know in college, and I think because I got in a little bit of trouble, to be honest with you. But he and I got along, and he told me there was an opening at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I wanted to do criminal work. And I remember asking him, what does the job entail? And he said, we're going to do civil work, a lot of mortgage foreclosure stuff. And I said, oh, well, do you think I can work my way into criminal work? And he, as he sagely pointed out, he said, well, it's a lot better chance of you getting into criminal work in this office than where you are. So I said, okay. And I went and loved it.
And
That's where I met you.
How long were you in the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office from March of 75 until, I think, September of 84. And in that time, I did civil work and criminal work. And the last year and a half, the last year and a half, I served as the first assistant to then U.S. Attorney Joe Stadmiller.
Yeah, so he brought you in and became your boss.
He did.
Yeah. Now, let's go back again to your family. So when you started in a practice, you had one son.
Yes.
But the family grew.
The family grew. We had 3 more children after that. We have a boy and 3 girls.
Sort of like replicating your childhood, being the only male and with sisters.
Yeah, it's good for him. It's good to be surrounded by ladies.
And you're now surrounded by a lot of grandchildren.
Yeah, we have 15 grandkids now. I always, every chance I get to tell one of them on the side, I'll say, no, I don't have any favorite grandchildren. But if I did, you'd be in the running. So they all think they're great.
Yeah, the Irish,
and they are.
The Irish Blarney, you know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask you to tell me their birthdays or anything like that.
I could do it, but not in the time allotted.
Okay. Let's go back. You were in the U.S. Attorney's Office for those years, but then you returned to private practice.
I did. I went to a law firm called Davis and Kilthau and was there from, again, September of 84 until I was appointed as a magistrate judge on August 1st, 1995.
Do you remember any memorable cases while you were in private practice?
Yes. The one case, well, I remember a lot, but the one case that probably stands out is I represented our firm and represented, but I was a lead trial counsel representing 2 suburban school districts in the Metropolitan School desegregation suit that was tried in 1987, I think. And so I spent the first couple of years with the law firm doing that, not exclusively, but an awful lot of time doing that. And then when it went to trial, it took the plaintiffs 2.5 months to present their case. And then we settled. I think the defense had a pretty good case, but we settled, and I think it was good for the community. We expanded what was known as the 220 program, which was the integration program, which would bring minority students into the suburbs.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal to me.
So I first met you, as you mentioned, when you were Assistant United States Attorney.
Right.
And I was on the bench.
Yep.
What about your time there? Any cases that stand out for whatever
Oh, yeah.
reason?
Well, one of them was, it was entitled United States versus Tony Peters. And it was a cocaine case, cocaine distributing case, that was pretty memorable because Tony he had a lot of professional baseball friends. And there were allegedly, and I think in fact I know in fact, distributions to a lot of ball players, some of whose names you would know, and some of whose careers continued on with great success.
Okay, we'll keep the names confidential.
We'll keep the name confidential.
Okay, so now you've been in the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And I remember appearing in front of you in that case and arguing for bond for Tony Peter, I think my colleague wanted no bond, and we agreed to argue to you that, how about if we take all of the gems, the jewels that Tony had in his house and post them for bond, and you accepted that.
Well, you were just a very persuasive litigator.
Yeah.
So you were a persuasive litigator, both in private practice and in the U.S. Attorney's Office. So when did you start thinking about becoming a judge and leaving the practice of
You
law?
know, I never thought about it until one of my friends who was on the commission that was going to be screening the applicants, he and I and some other people were out having a cocktail on a Friday night, and he suggested that one of our other colleagues apply for the position, and you might enjoy this. And I didn't think much about it, and then I went home that night and I was talking to Jody, my wife, and I said, I think I'd like to, I might be okay at that. I've done government work, I've done private practice work, I've done plaintiff's work, I've done defense work. Maybe I could, I'm intrigued by it, and I think I might apply. And I did. And I got into the final 5. But one of the other 5 was a woman named Pat Gorence, who was very, very qualified, and a friend. And she was selected. And but then another position opened up very shortly thereafter. And probably like a lot of things in life, once you go for something, now you really want it. And I applied the second time, and I was fortunate enough the second time to be selected by the district judges, and I think you had a say in that as well.
Well, I know
But I won't ask you what you said.
Well, I know that the Eastern District's been very fortunate that you made that decision and that you were selected. And I know that the magistrate judges in our district do both criminal and civil duties, but over the years, based upon your past experience, did you prefer one over the other?
Well, I loved criminal work. I liked the action of criminal cases. I liked overseeing motions to suppress. So yeah, I guess I liked that the most. Although I liked civil cases, I liked trying cases. But it's stressful trying cases, trying to get the things right. Not as stressful as the lawyers who have their clients or at least money on the line. But yeah, I enjoyed trying cases. I enjoyed being in the courtroom. I think I enjoyed that much more than researching and writing, to be honest with you. I never pretended to be a scholar. I enjoyed the action.
What about, I know there's always duties that you maybe don't like or prefer less than others. What were some of those?
Really? Well,
if you don't want to.
No. I don't think I'm unique in this regard. I found Social Security cases very, very hard. Not always to decide the cases, but all these people, they're hurting. 99% of them, I think, were really hurting. Maybe not enough to qualify for Social Security disability benefits. So I always found that very stressful, painful, I guess, to try to get it right, especially when you had to affirm the decision of the ALJ.
So looking back, you made that decision to move from private practice to become a judge. Did you make the right decision?
I did. Loved it. Loved the job. Loved the job. It's it's the best job in the world, at least if you're going to go into the judicial area. I guess I should say I think it's even better than being a district judge or an Article III judge, because as much as I liked criminal work, even when I was a prosecutor, I didn't like the sentencing part of it. I liked the contest, but I wasn't crazy about the sentencing. That was kind of sad. And as a district judge or an Article III judge, you've got to deal with those issues. And as a magistrate judge, I don't have to do that. And I get to, I think, see people at the very first end. You're really the magistrate judges are the first face they see in criminal or in many civil cases. And I get to do mediations, and I like mediations. And because I was always a little bit jealous. I'm rambling now a little bit, but I was always a little bit jealous when I was in private practice of the transactional lawyers. I didn't want to do transactional work, but it was always kind of interesting to see after they put the deal together, everybody went out to dinner together. Everybody won, you know. And most of the time when you're in court, other than doing naturalizations, somebody walks away unhappy. But in mediations, you can help put a deal together where everybody walks away reasonably happy. And so I always find that satisfying.
Yeah, and I know right now, and we'll talk about that in a minute, you're doing mediations, but over the years, you've seen the duties of the magistrate judge in the Eastern District change. And you were able to be in charge. Would there be any changes you'd institute in the judicial system that would affect the duties of the magistrate judge?
No, other than just to do everything we could to encourage consents and have every district, well, I guess it's too much to ask that every district does the same thing, but as you know, the Eastern District of Wisconsin was one of the model districts for years, in that the magistrate judges in our district were on the wheel. We get cases directly, and for the most part, it's one judge, one case, so that we've eliminated reports and recommendations, and I think that was a great move. I hope that we don't slip back into any of that, because I think that it made the job much more interesting for the magistrate judges, and I think in many ways it made it better for the litigants, because they didn't get a second kick at the cat, and they didn't have to spend money trying to get a second kick at the cat.
Yeah. As you look back, and I know you made lots of decisions and had all sorts of cases, are there any decisions or orders that really stand out in your mind, of which you really take pride in?
Well, I'm a Bears fan. And early on in the... No. I know. Well, I grew up in Chicago. But not too long into my being appointed, in fact, pretty early on, there was a lawsuit over the cheeseheads and who had the copyright or the rights to sell the cheesehead. And it rose its head right before Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers were going to play into I think it was the '96 Super Bowl, if I'm right. Maybe it's a little bit later. I don't know which one it was. But so we had the hearing, and I issued a preliminary injunction, or issued an order following a motion for preliminary injunction. And without getting into the results of it, it was fun to write. And it was fun to hear testimony, because one of the funny things I thought was the plaintiff was trying to show that they had the rights. And as it turns out, I found for the defendants, and one of the witnesses that the defendants called was a fellow named Amarek Wojciechowski. And they demonstrated that Amarek Wojciechowski really came up with the idea of the cheesehead, and they had pictures of him in the Chicago Sun-Times wearing the very first cheesehead, which was made out of cardboard, at a Milwaukee Brewers game with the Chicago White Sox. Big article about it. But I'll never forget Amarek Wojciechowski. He got up on the stand and they said, would you state your name for the record, please? And he said, Amarek Wojciechowski. He looks at me and goes, where's your house key, Judge? That's how you remember my name. And I've never forgotten it.
You mentioned earlier that one of your least favorite things was doing research and maybe writing.
No, I enjoyed it. Social Security cases I
Social
didn't enjoy.
Security cases.
No, I liked research and writing, but I like being in the action first.
I was going to use that sort of as a segue into law clerks, because we get law clerks to do research, and you've had a number.
That's why it's important to hire a good law clerk, to make you look good.
Well, I was just going to ask, you've had a number of law clerks over the years, and how did you select your law clerks?
Well, early on, I didn't quite know how to select my law clerks, but because if you're looking for a law clerk, I think it's different than if you're looking for somebody, say, to practice law with you. I learned fairly early on that what I want as a law clerk is what I'm not, and that is a scholar. Somebody who can really help me come up with the right decisions in cases that require a lot of legal research and writing. And so I always looked for, or at least I learned very early on, to look for students who had done a lot of writing, journal writing, and of course had good grades, but also who were personable. And I think on your list you're asking me, how did you go about, how did you select the ones you selected, or something like that. And one of the things that was important to me was, I've got your grades, I know you're smart, I know you've done this, I know you've done that. Why do you want to be in Milwaukee? Not why do you want to work for me, but why do you want to be in Milwaukee? Because I wanted to find kids that wanted to stay here. It wasn't absolutely a requirement by any means, but I saw my role as somebody who had practiced law in the city of Milwaukee and who had belonged to different organizations, and I knew people. I want them to work with me for a couple of years with the expectation they'll stay in Milwaukee so I can help them find a job for the next step. Now, it didn't always work out that way, but it was important to me that they want to be in Milwaukee and hopefully want to stay in at least the southeastern Wisconsin area.
And I know you've been a mentor to your law clerks. Have some of them gone on to, quote, fame and fortune?
Probably fortune, but a number of them, and I think because I had been a U.S. attorney, an assistant U.S. attorney, and I very much loved that job and always spoke very highly of the sense of mission one had there, which was considerably different than in being in private practice. One was financially motivated, not entirely, but you got to pay your bills. And the other was just trying to get it right, trying to not convict people, but trying to use the power you have to maybe keep people out of the system instead of putting them in the system. And I always found that satisfying. So a number of people went on to become assistant U.S. attorneys, and one served as the U.S. attorney over the last couple of years. He was just replaced by Donald Trump's nominee or appointment. But I've got a number of assistants, and a number of people have gone on to be very successful private practitioners.
You've retired from active duty and are now on recall status. Why do you decide to choose going on recall as opposed to just totally retiring, staying with your band, playing golf?
Because my wife doesn't want me to bring all my stuff home. No, there's some truth to that. But no, I wanted to stay involved. I'm pretty friendly and gregarious, and I like people, and I want to stay involved. I want to still work with you. I love the federal courthouse. I love the federal family. I like to do mediations, and that's what I get to do now. And it's a place to go. It's a place to try to remain a little bit relevant in the legal community, and it makes me feel. While I still have a lot of time to do a lot of traveling and a lot of good things, it gives me a sense of contribution to the system, I guess.
As we wrap this interview up, let me ask if you've got any words of advice that you'd pass on to the next generation of attorneys or judges.
No advice other than, I've always said this, that the legal profession I think is the most honorable profession. And I don't mean that to denigrate doctors or lawyers or not doctors, doctors or dentists or any of those, but think about it. When you're a lawyer, as painful as it is sometimes, and sometimes you don't even get paid, you're helping people that other people don't want to help. When you're a doctor, everybody's pulling for you. When you're in very many other professions, everybody's pulling for you. When you're a lawyer, there's a lot of people who aren't pulling for you, especially if you're representing criminal defendants. And I find that to be very noble, that you're standing up for somebody that nobody wants to stand up for. And so I just say it's a wonderful profession. It's not easy. It's stressful. But someday when you're dead and gone, I think if you do a good job, people will say, he was noble.
Well, Bill, it's been a real privilege for me to be able to conduct this interview because you've been my colleague, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our years together, and I hope we have many more.
And you and Pat Gorntz and I are called the Three Migos.
That's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we were about 30, I
Whoa.
think we were